Okay, everybody, welcome to another Lights Camera Sports podcast presented by Chestnut Hill Technologies. I'm your host, Mike Galtieri. So happy to have you on board here today. A very, very exciting guest. You know him, NFL, college, all about everything. CBS analyst Charles Davis joins us. Charles, so happy to have you on the podcast. We focus mostly on Boston College in New England, but we'd love to have a national perspective, and we thank you for joining us.
Well, Mike, thank you for having me. And it's so much fun to talk with you this way. I mean, we've worked as colleagues in the booth for a while now. So this is kind of cool. I think a lot of people know or may not know that you do a lot of games, whether it's college or pro, and you work in the TV booths with a lot of people in a variety of capacities. You do stats, you do stage managing. I could go on for days, but the best part is you're just a great colleague, a great guy to be around. And it makes the day go better. And, I think I told you before our last playoff game, it was cool to walk in and see you there. For some reason, it's a good thing for me. So thank you so much for having me on your show. And as soon as I heard Chestnut Hill, I got a big smile on my face because I grew up in New York State. So I was around for the formation of the Big East. Wow. And I always heard, and from Chestnut Hill, and here comes BC and someone. So that was always cool for me.
And, that's a great segue to start this podcast. I always like to show people's life stories. You're from, I hope I pronounced right, is it New Paltz, New York high school?
New Paltz, New York. Yeah, you're pretty darn close. Mid-Hudson Valley, 2 hours north of New York City, an hour south of Albany. A lot of people might know Kingston, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, Middletown, that area. So we were in Ulster County, and we were surrounded by Sullivan, Orange, and Dutchess County. So a wonderful place to grow up. I always said there's about 3,000 people when I was growing up. I've been corrected by people, but I like the sound of 3,000, but it's probably around 4,000 growing up. So you got to add that to it. And now I think it's somewhere around 20,000. I think a lot of people have discovered my little burg.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. I remember going to a wedding in Kingston, New York. So it's really, really cool. All right, let's talk about your career. Quarterback, all-state, junior, senior year football. First of all, what other sports did you play in high school? And just talk about your high school experience.
Yeah, my high school experience was wonderful. I was lucky enough, as I mentioned, growing up in a town small enough that you know everyone and everyone knows you. My mom was a teacher's aide there for the migrant daycare center because you had a lot of migrant workers. You have a lot of people who worked apple season in my hometown area. I think I had 3 high school teammates whose families owned apple orchards. Wow. And so those people would pick apples in the fall and then in the summertime, they'd be down in Florida picking oranges. And so you had a lot of people go back and forth. And then eventually many people would settle in the area. So my mom worked there. My dad was a teacher at New Paltz High, a teacher and a coach. And he also coached Division III basketball, junior college basketball, the whole deal. And I ended up playing high school basketball for him. So you mentioned other sports. I played high school basketball, high school baseball, and high school football. So small towns tend to have that, right? Every able-bodied male on deck, which sports can you play and how many of them can you play? And the beauty was your coaches were essentially the same too. My high school football offensive coach, right? Coach my a quarterback and what have you. He also was my baseball coach. And you just go right down the line with that, assistant football coach, head baseball coach, my high school football coach, John Ford at one point was coaching basketball. We can go on and on. Those days, not quite the same, but for me, I'm talking about now, but for me, idyllic back then. And my teammates were the same across the spectrum. I played with a lot of guys, football, basketball, baseball. Wrestling was also very popular at my school. Kimball Motter was our head coach, and he'd been an All-American wrestler in college, I think at Kutztown State in Pennsylvania. And his brother Andy was head coach at Penn State at the time. And you know what a power they are now under Cale Sanderson. So it was always a lot of fun. It was a wonderful upbringing. It was terrific. And even though I didn't wrestle, we knew when wrestling season began, Mike?
How's that?
When the first wrestler passed out in class because they'd wear those wet rubber suits underneath their clothes trying to cut weight. And of course they wouldn't eat and they'd get weak and one guy would pass out in class and the teachers, they didn't even blink. They just like, call the nurse, tell Coach Motter, such and such just passed out, and off we went. That's how we knew wrestling season was on. But to give my classmates credit, they were a powerhouse. Boy, were they good at what they did. And we tried to emulate that in all of our other sports. We were good in football. We got good in basketball. My first coach, Jeff Ackert, got us good again. And then my dad took it the rest of the way, where we became a postseason fixture for a couple of years there. And then in baseball, we weren't bad either. So under Coach Freer, Bill Freer. So a lot of fun back in the good old days.
So how did you decide then to focus on football, and then how did Tennessee come calling? How did that whole process go for you, the college selection process?
Yeah, let me try and nutshell it. At that time in my school, and I don't know that it's quite the same now. We'd never had a Division I football player from New Paltz High. We'd had plenty of guys go and play, Division II, Division III, that sort of a deal. I had a couple of teammates who played at Ithaca when they were a flat out power under Jack Butterfield, and played, I think, twice for national championships in Amos Alonzo Stagg Bowl. And they were excellent football players. But I was lucky enough that for whatever reason, I had enough talent that other people were looking. And my mom's from East Tennessee, a place called Elizabeth in Tennessee. That's where I was born, Carter County Hospital, the old Carter County Hospital, although the new one now is probably 50 years old. But, the old Carter County Hospital, that's where I was born. My dad's from West Virginia. So I had a lot of interest in Tennessee, and I saw Condridge Holloway play quarterback there when I was 8 or 9 years old in 1974 season opener against UCLA. And even as a little kid in New York, I realized watching a black quarterback in the SEC, I knew that was different. I knew it wasn't the norm. And my dad was a college quarterback at an HBCU called Bluefield State in West Virginia, since integrated, dropped football. I think they brought it back last year for the first time. And I remember watching that day and going, wow, this is unbelievable. Condridge was great. And I ended up telling my dad that day, I'm going to go to Tennessee and play. Well, then I get into high school and everything happens. And we have no idea. Me, Coach Ford, none of us have real true idea. Am I good enough to be a Division I player? I have no idea. So we wrote 2 letters, one to the University of Missouri. Remember a guy named Phil Bradley? He was their quarterback. And then later on went to the Major League Baseball and was a great player in MLB, probably had about a 10-year career. And Tennessee, because I love Tennessee. Never heard back from Missouri. Tennessee said, hey, send film, we'll evaluate you. Fortunately, they thought I was good enough, and that's how the whole process began. And so I was recruited by a number of places, but I ended up picking Tennessee.
Now, were you intimidated going to the SEC from upstate New York, and how did that all, when you first got to the campus in Knoxville?
It's funny, when you say SEC now, it's a whole different connotation. The SEC has always been a power. Let's not get it twisted, right? Obviously. But I grew up in New York State, and college football wasn't a huge deal. Penn State was the resident college football team for just about anyone in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, the whole Mideast. I mean,
Make some of my fans upset with Boston College.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, no offense to Syracuse, no offense to any of them, but they all fought the same deal. Whether it was Syracuse, BC, Penn State, whoever, Rutgers, they were all fighting the same deal, which was the pros. In the Northeast, the pros rule. Yes. Okay. Well, whoever it was, the Patriots for you guys, the Jets and the Giants where I was growing up, the Bills came into play upstate. Syracuse had to battle the Bills. Eastern football wasn't seen the same. I mean, You can go back and check. Penn State was a powerhouse for a long time, and Joe Paterno didn't win a national championship until later in his career, even though he had undefeated teams. They'd always think someone else was better because Eastern football didn't get the respect. So for me, the West Coast was a big deal. USC, UCLA, the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan. And obviously I'm leaving teams off. I'm not trying to do that deliberately, but that's what you saw on your TV. Because back when I was a kid, you saw 1 game a week.
Wow.
This TV thing we're seeing now didn't exist. So you get 1 game a week. And where I grew up, you heard a lot about Army because they were an hour away and they actually threw the ball around and they weren't even running option under Homer Smith and his quarterback Lehman Hall, and they called it the air assault. It was a great one. Lehman Hall was so smart as a quarterback that he dated his head coach Homer Smith's daughter and married her. Talk about job security. That's a smart young man right there. So that's what I had going on. Was I intimidated? I think like most kids then, yes, to an extent, because you gave great deference to upperclassmen when you went to school. I don't think it's the same way now. Kids are precocious now, and I don't mean it in a bad way. Kids do national things starting at 10, 11, 12 years old. They know each other across the country. They go to the same camps. They play on national television in high school. They take plane trips to play games. For us, an hour away was a huge trip. What? We're going to play them an hour away? And everything then, Mike, was mythical. You heard about this guy, but you didn't see this guy. Oh, nowadays, you see them all on tape. So, yeah, I was a little bit intimidated going in. So I ended up redshirting my first year. And then after, I was fortunate enough to start for 4 years at Tennessee. What
sticks out from your college career? What was your favorite moment? You had some good teams. You had some big wins. I know against Alabama. What stuck out in the volunteer program?
I could go through so many things. Listen, I played for Johnny Majors, a college football Hall of Fame football player. He's not in as a coach because of the 60% rule, but he built programs at Iowa State. He built Pitt into a national power on the East Coast and won a national championship. He resurrected Tennessee during his time there. Wonderful, wonderful. How lucky was I to play for him? To play for Johnny Majors was a big deal for me. And Lee Majors, who was the $6 million man, the actor when I was growing up, he literally took his stage name because he had watched Johnny Majors play growing up. And that's why he became Majors. And the funny part is they became friends and he used to come to games and the whole deal. So that was kind of cool. But, for me, we won the SEC in my junior year. And it's always cool to talk with my teammates and realize we were part of the class that helped bring Tennessee all the way back. That was our first SEC championship in 16 years, and our people were starved for it. We were starved for it. And then we beat Miami, who was number 2 in the country at the time, in the Sugar Bowl, 35-7. And if they had beaten us, they would have won a national title because that was the old bowl system.
Yes.
They had beaten Oklahoma. Oklahoma was playing Penn State in the Orange Bowl. When Oklahoma beat Penn State, if Miami had beaten us, but head-to-head, Miami would have won the vote and been the national champions. We beat them 35-7 and knocked them out of a national title. I think we finished number 4 in the country. So I could give you a million different moments, but team, collective, that has to be the best because that's why you go to school to try and win a championship.
And you had a lot of success. So then the NFL came calling, the draft. Just talk about how that whole process went and how you decided to get into broadcasting from there after that point.
Yeah, the NFL draft wasn't the greatest thing in the world for me, Mike, because back then there were 12 rounds. And at the end of 12 rounds, no one had called me. I was the guy left waiting by the phone. So
were you surprised?
I think I was surprised because when I looked across the board and I saw the number of people who were drafted and thought, heck, I'm a 4-year starter on really good teams and had some good success there. I had some injury issues in college, shoulders, things of that nature that may have hurt me a little bit. For whatever reason, though, people found me lacking. Now, my speed might have been an issue. My overall athleticism may have been an issue. You have to ask different scouts and different people. But I wish I could tell them that they were totally wrong. But I can't because of this reason, Mike. I didn't get drafted, and it hurt me so much personally that when I did get a free agent opportunity with the Dallas Cowboys, I did not prepare for it the way I should have. Oh. Was I in shape? Absolutely. That wasn't an issue. It wasn't like I failed any conditioning tests, okay? Was I mentally prepared? Sure. I knew football. I knew I was ready to go. But if you're an undrafted free agent, you have to go in with a single-minded focus at this. This is all there is. This is all that it's about. And I think I still carried the hurt with me of not being drafted. Oh. So my immaturity hurt me in my opportunity. And when I got cut by the Cowboys, that was it. I went back to school. I was going to finish up grad school because I graduated in 4 years, played my 5th year, my redshirt year as a grad student. So I was going back to school. But as I discovered as I got older, it keeps nagging at me. And
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I'm firmly convinced, Mike, that when they close the lid on my coffin, my last thought, my last words are going to be, I should have prepared better for the Cowboys tryout. And that's what fuels me today, because I will never be unprepared again. I will never not be ready to go and have that focus that I need for the assignment that I'm given. You may be better than me, but you will not outwork me. You will not out-prepare me. You will not do those things. You may prove yourself, and remember, our business is objective. So one person likes this, but you know what I'm saying now. That way you're not going to get me, and it's all because I didn't do it when I should have when I came out of college and had a tryout with the Cowboys. So I'll never know if I was good enough or not because I didn't give myself enough of an opportunity. Did
you realize then you weren't prepared? Or did you kind of think about it afterward? Did it take many years to think about that? You know what I'm saying?
Mike, I think there was a part of me that knew going in,
Yeah,
but the biggest part of me learned it later.
gotcha.
And that's the thing I take with me. And I tell kids this all the time. I'll be on, look, you can go back and find the video of me on draft coverage on the last day when we get down to round 7, giving the same speech every year. Hey, if you don't get drafted, that's not the end of the world, and give them my experience. And how many times do we turn on the TV and turn on the Pro Bowl, those who still watch the Pro Bowl, right? But you see guys who are named Pro Bowl, All Pro. How many of them do you see that have undrafted free agent next to their name? A lot more than you would ever expect. So
No
being
question.
drafted isn't the be all end all. Being undrafted isn't the be all end all. And I allowed it to be. That's on me. But again, in the rest of my life, that will never happen again. And I try and impart that wisdom to others in my message and my experiences with it. So that's what happened with me there. Getting into broadcasting, I'll make it very quick. I worked for a living. Okay.
Yeah, I want to get into that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I was an intern in the Southeastern Conference office coming out of, I interned in the athletic director's office at Tennessee to finish up my graduate degree. So I'm an undergrad in political science, master's in history. So to get that done, I interned in the athletic director's office. Doug Dickey was our athletic director, Coach Dickey, but he gave me a great opportunity to do that. Then I interned the Southeastern Conference office of the commissioner. Dr. Harvey W. Schiller was the commissioner at the time. He and his staff there are phenomenal. I could name names, but I would take up too much time. My apologies to everyone who helped me along the way. Then I coached football at the University of the Pacific under Walt Harris as the head coach. Hugh Jackson was the running backs coach on that staff. John Gruden was the tight ends coach and my roommate on that staff.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So, those guys went on and did a few things along the way. And then I just kind of fell off the pace a little bit. And then I went and worked at the United States Olympic Committee, started out as an intern and became the director of the Olympic Training Center, worked at Stanford University as an assistant athletic director, worked at Disney Sports as a program manager. And then as a director of the PGA Tours, their PGA Tour golf tournament, as the first ever Black tournament director in PGA Tour history. So from there, I got into broadcasting and got in as a total fluke. Someone thought I could do it. Mark Whitworth is his name. He gave my name to someone. They had it for 2 years. They got desperate, called me, and that's how it got started. And once I had the bug, I knew that's something I wanted to pursue. And all the things I didn't do to prepare for a tryout with the Cowboys, I did from that moment going forward to try and be where we are today, where you and I are talking. So that's how I got into it. But my background was working. My background was sports, but it wasn't broadcasting. I mean, as you heard, I'm not a communications major, nothing like that.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Just not to go over each one, but just to talk about the different things you did. At any point when you're working at Stanford or coaching Pacific, did you ever think at all that you might want to one day be on CBS, or was it just totally out of you're just going day by day and seeing what happens?
No, that was something I always wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get into it. I didn't know that there was really an opportunity. I did some stuff at Tennessee when I was in school. A college classmate named Mike Morrow had a long career at ESPN. He got me started there. All right. And I did a few things there for what we called UTV. All right. University of Tennessee Television. Right. And then my boss at the SEC, Dr. Harvey W. Schiller, he knew about my aspirations. He introduced me some people at Turner and took me around and, tried to get me in front of the right people. And it just nothing ever really fit. And it just took that fluke down the road to reignite that spark. But Mike, let's just be honest about it. I think I speak for anyone who's watching this Zoom right now, who sits at home and watches all of us do our thing and sits there and says, something, I can do that. And I don't ever tell them that they can't, because that's how it starts. You sit at home, you say, God, listening to him or listening to her, I think I can do that. I'm calling the plays before they are, and it's not always a bad thing. A lot of people want to make it like it's a bad thing. It's not. But do you get an opportunity? Can you do it when it's really for real? Can you do all of that? Can you learn and grow? I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity, and here I am today.
And you've had, once you got into broadcast too, I was looking at the jobs. You worked a radio in Orlando, Jefferson Pilot, AFL, AFL football there, the March Madness, NCAAs, Golf Channel. You were everywhere in those early days of your broadcasting career. I'm sure getting a lot of reps.
Absolutely. And you just nailed it. Reps, like anything, doesn't matter what the job is, does not matter what we do, does not matter, what's your profession. Don't we all get better the more times we do something?
Yeah, no
right?
question.
If we're doing it right, we learn how to do it better. We learn how to do it more efficiently. We might change something the next time. We might continue to do something that we learn that works. You name it, right? Pick your profession and apply that to what you do. So if you're listening to us and watching us, just think about your job. How do I get better? How do I do this? How do I do that? Who do you seek out that helps you? Who do you bounce ideas off of? It's all the same thing, right? Reps, 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 reps. So Mike, my reps literally Little League baseball, Pop Warner football, AAU basketball, all the way through. I've worked on the lower levels. I've worked sidelines of high school football games. I've called high school football games. I remember I called a game for Frank Gores in high school, where he fumbled 3 times in the first quarter and still ran for over 300 yards that night. So I could go on all day with that. Listen, I've done women's volleyball. I've done girls softball. I've done, men's baseball. I was the analyst for SEC Game of the Week in college baseball for one season because Larry Conley, who normally did it, one of the great announcers and former great player at Kentucky in baseball and basketball, he was ill that year. So they asked me to fill in for him. So you could find tape somewhere, probably, I don't advise it, but you can find them where I was calling SEC baseball in the Game of the Week with Dave Neal and doing that. And, it's just been a blast. And basketball, I've been an analyst. I've been a sideline person, football analyst, sideline person, volleyball, as I mentioned, I did analyst, which is probably a farce. I've done some golf stuff. I was co-host of a golf show called the Grey Goose 18th Hole on the Golf Channel.
Gotcha.
I have been fortunate, but you nailed it right in the beginning. Reps. The more reps, the more opportunities, the better you get, the more comfortable you get, the better you prepare. And I think all of those experiences propelled me to where you and I are talking here today.
In this last couple of minutes here, for me, tell me if I'm wrong. I think your big break was that 2007 Fiesta Bowl, Boise State, Oklahoma. I feel like that's when you were on the national stage. Just your thoughts on that, or maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe something else, but just that game itself. That's where I think I really first heard about you.
Yeah, I think that you're right about that. I don't think there's any question about it. Had I done national stuff before? Sure. You mentioned the NCAA tournament. I was a sideline person for the NCAA tournament. CBS gave me a great opportunity. I did games for Turner Sports in college football, and then they used me as a sideline person during the NBA playoffs. I'd worked the first couple of rounds. So they gave me a chance. But you're right. My biggest break was Ed Gorin, David Hill, giving me a phone call from Fox Sports and offered me an opportunity to join their group and do the BCS. And they'd acquired the rights to the BCS. And our first game was Boise State, Oklahoma. Tom Brennan play-by-play, Chris Myers on the sidelines, myself and Coach Barry Alvarez in the booth. And it was my big break. And whether it was good or bad, some people thought it was horrendous. Some people thought it was okay. I think what nailed it for me was down the stretch when Boise had gotten into overtime, or Oklahoma had gotten into overtime with Boise, I should say, because Boise led the whole way.
Wow.
When Boise scored in overtime, and before they scored, I said on air, if they score, they're going to go for 2, because they just had the look of a team like, we can't keep slugging with Oklahoma. We've done it. We got to get out of here. And they scored, went for 2, got it on the Statue of Liberty play with Ian Johnson. And I'll never forget after the game, Ed Gorin, one of my great mentors, he and David Hill and Bill O'Brien, the Deuce, those guys believed in me and brought me in. He pulled me aside and said, when I heard you predict them going for 2, I said, old Charles has pushed them all into the middle of the table, hasn't he? Oh. And that let me know that, whoa, if that had gone wrong, who knows what would happen. But part of this whole world experience is sometimes you got to know when to take a chance. And I felt like I was on really solid ground because of what I knew in football, having been there before, feeling the moment, and I took a chance and it all worked out. And I think that helped me a lot.
That's a great story. Great story. And now also too, you're doing the CBS, of course, we'll get to that in a second, but also a lot of people know you from Madden too. Just quickly talk about that, how that whole experience is. And of course we lost John Madden this year, but just the video game and your life with that too.
Yeah, it's humbling because, you're talking about a franchise that so many people play, so many people know. And you and I both know Coach Madden is Coach Madden, but there's a whole multiple generations of people who don't even know he was a football coach. Yes. They know him as a broadcaster and they know him from the video game. So to be a part of his franchise and what he put together and what he created is extremely humbling. Myself, my partner, Brandon Godden, who does the play-by-play on it, we understand that every time we go in, we have a responsibility to try and do it the best we can for all the incredible numbers of people who play this game and care about this game. And, you know, we're not going to get it right every time, but I hope everyone understands we are giving you our best efforts. We are absolutely doing that. We're in our 7th year. And for us, that's off the charts. But again, pay homage to Coach Madden. As you mentioned, we just lost him, but his franchise will endure forever, I believe. And to know that we're a teeny tiny part of it. And the last thing I'll say is I've worked BCS, I've done NFL playoffs, I've done big time bowl games. I've been lucky, right? First time I ever got street cred from my son, who's now 23, was when I told him I was getting a Madden franchise. First time he ever jumped up, hugged me, thought it was a really big deal. The rest of it was like, okay, great. Madden, oh, that meant something. So I learned a lot about the franchise just from his reaction.
And the whole younger generation now, you're a household name. No doubt about it. All right, Charles, last question for me. When you're not busy, when you're not working, what do you do in your free time? What do you like to do for fun? You're just hanging out.
I love to read. I'm a big reader, and I don't read during the season because, as you know, as you prepare for your games, we're in the same boat, right? We're reading game notes, we're reading articles, you know, we're reading all these things that come about getting us ready for the game. So I have to take my pleasure reading, kind of put it to the side, because once I dive into pleasure reading, you've lost me for a while. And I'm a big fiction guy. I know, believe me, I read enough nonfiction in trying to prepare for what I do, try and get better at what I do, those sorts of things. But you give me fiction, you give me my authors like a Harlan Coben, you give me a Brad Thor, you give me a Jack Carr, you give me those people, you give me a Lisa Scottolini, I'm locked in. It's done, finished. But I'm also lucky enough, as I said, when I read the nonfiction, my colleague at CBS Sports, Amy Trask, wrote an incredible book. And her book was, I think the title was "You Throw Like a Girl," or you negotiate like a girl, or something like that. Amy was the president of the Oakland Raiders, the Los Angeles Raiders, the now Las Vegas Raiders. She broke so many chains, so many things, and I admire her. And her book is just off the charts great. My friend Don McPherson wrote a book about how men need to be better and how we need to be better in our society and how we need to relate to people. I just love to read and I love to learn. But, when you're reading these things, Michael Eric Dyson, when anything he writes, I have to grab it and read it because he's going to make me better and make me think about things. But you give me some fiction, I'm knocking down the latest Harlan Coben right now. And anytime Harlan Coben writes, I am there. And I've been lucky enough to meet a few of these people and their process and their work ethic. I think they're things that apply for me too. So I try to learn from them.
And I love that too, because I would never have known you're the fiction guy. That's why I love asking those questions. It's cool.
Yeah. I absolutely do. And as I said, I'm just so lucky that there have been so many people out there have been so good to me. Brad Thor has been phenomenal to me. Harlan Coben, Lisa Scottolini, they've all been absolutely great to me. And, my old colleague, Mike Mayock, he's turned me on to a few of these people as well. And Lisa Scottolini's a Philly girl, right? So she's from that area, and a lot of what she writes is that. Actually, the first time I met her, I showed up at a book signing in Nashville. Just by chance, she was there, and I saw it, and I showed up that night just so I could say I got a chance to meet Lisa Scottolini, and we had been exchanging it. So she knew me because she's a sports fan. She's a big Eagles fan.
Okay.
And we talked for a little bit, and I picked up the phone and called my friend Mike. I said, "Hey, Mike, you're not going to believe this. Guess who I just met? I just met your author, Lisa Scottolini." And the words he said back to me, I can't say on a family show like this right here, but he was like, "I'm from Philly and I haven't met her yet."
There you go. That's what it's all about.
Mike, these people have been so incredibly wonderful to me, not just with what they put out there in their writing and what I'm getting from that and that enjoyment. But if I've been lucky enough to meet them, they've been very giving of themselves in terms of answering my questions and just being tolerant of my fandom, because I go total fanboy. Okay, there's no getting around. It's like I said, to me, authors, writers, they're my rock stars. So how people grew up saying, this person, my rock idol and all that.
Yeah,
these people are my rock stars.
Wow.
But by the way, Jack Carr, you're next, man. Okay. I have to meet Jack Carr because his series about James Reese, dude, go get him because they are phenomenal. And one last guy, if you haven't read Matthew Betley, read Matthew Betley. He's an up and comer, and boy, he's good.
Wow, that's a source of knowledge. That's pretty good right there. Well, Charles, we appreciate you taking the time too. I feel like I could have talked for another 30 minutes, but we really appreciate it. A lot of fun, and I think the fans will appreciate learning the different aspects of you. So really appreciate it.
I appreciate it a bunch. And look, somewhere in my basement in New Paltz, New York, where my dad still lives, there's a big thing of recruiting stuff and all. And I still have bumper stickers that say "Fly with the Eagles" that I got from BC. So,
there you go. There you go. Hopefully they'll be back on track soon. There we go.
Well, they will. Jeff Hafley's doing a really nice job there.
Well, the next podcast we'll get you on. We'll talk about the Eagles more.
Sounds good. Look forward to it.
Okay, Charles. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You take care.
Awesome. Let me just stop the recording.